Cindy.
I'm Gary.
I'm Cindy. We're Pathways Homestead. We are in Dogwood Canyon, and we are behind a waterfall, and it is so pretty here. So if you're in Southwest Missouri, come on over and check out Dogwood Canyon.
So that's set up where you're having to put all the cleaning right here, and then it just
Yep, goes up, gets clean, comes down,
Goes
gets
to the
ground,
cleaner.
goes
Okay.
up, gets sifted, comes down again.
it's got to go
If-
through the cleaner up there.
We call it, this is an Evans standard mill.
Okay.
So Oliver Evans, 1781, invents the automated flour mill.
Yeah.
And the whole premise of it is to reduce labor.
Okay.
So that, prior to that, you either had to use an auger, which meant your building had to be massive to get it up,
Right.
or you had to carry it up by a rope or shoulder.
Right.
And so by utilizing these legs and chutes, you make a mill that's condensed. You can go almost purely vertically, although he did recommend a tilt of like 7.5 degrees or something in them. I don't
Yeah.
remember. But they pretty much can go straight up.
Huh.
And so it really helps it to be able to work efficiently without labor. So as long as you put it in, you take it off, you don't need to touch it. It's been fun.
Yeah. Would you talk about the different grinds and the grist thing again?
Yeah, so we can grind any type of grain. Wheat, rye, barley, oats. We grind corn here. You can grind buckwheat. So all the different grains kind of have their expertise, kind of their where you want it. You wouldn't want to eat cornmeal as fine as your flour.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of need to have differences in those grinds. With a lot of other systems, that's dictated by the mill, whereas in our case, it's dictated by the miller. We can adjust this infinitely. The gap between the stones, as the grain feeds in, it's ground up and exits. And so the bigger that gap is, the coarser the grind's going to be. The closer it is, the finer the grinds. Now, when grinding corn, we typically have 3 ranges, with cracked corn being the biggest, primarily a feed source. And that's going to run anywhere from about 1/4 of an inch to about 1/8 of an inch between the stones. You get down below this, you start getting into what we call the grit range. Grits are going to run from about 1/8 of an inch, what we call double lot grits or distiller's grits, usually used in the production of alcohol, down into just your typical eating grits. Down through grits at the finest end is going to be right about the thickness of your thumbnail. It's about how close the stones are. Once you get down below that, you're really entering the cornmeal world. Cornmeal runs anywhere from about the thickness of your thumbnail to about the thickness of tissue paper. So you can have coarse meal, medium meal, fine meal, super fine, double or triple lot, which is like corn flour for tortillas. You're going to get down real fine. You're going to run that high end. You're always going to have some grit because of the burl content of corn. It has that hard starch in there. So even if you grind it at the same thickness as you would wheat flour, it's always going to have a little bit more grit to it because of the composition of the grain itself. So you're going to have a little bit difference in that.
So tell us why it's called the grist mill.
So grist is an old English word, and it means not done yet. What's coming off the stones are a conglomeration of all the things. Big chunks, whole kernels, it all comes off together, and we don't really want to eat all that, so we want to separate that back out. So the term grist just means not done yet, referring to any type of grain, not to be confused with grits, so that you have a grist mill. We're a grist mill that grinds grits, not a grits mill, right?
Right.
There's a difference. But that mixture needs to be separated out. You obviously wouldn't want to eat a whole beet, so we need to remove that stuff.
Right.
And so just like you have ore, which is unfinished metal, you have grist, which is unfinished grain. So
Okay.
it's not quite done yet. It has to go through that sifting process.
And then you've got a sifter that it runs
Right.
through.
We use a rotary sifter here, gyroscopic sifters, so whether they go like this are very common, but ours is a tube. That tube is wrapped in a screen, and as it spins,
Okay.
the grain inside that tube bounces around until it finds a hole in the screen it can fit through. So the finer your screens are, the more selective you're being. The bigger your screens, the more clearance you're allowed. And if you have multiple screens, you always do your finest first, which you pull off your finest stuff, and then you can separate out. We do 3 meal grits in waste. So we separate our cornmeal, which is used in our restaurant, the grits, which we can sell, and then our waste product, stuff that's really too big, we can send to Arkansas and feed it to the animals. So it's all utilized.
Cool. Cool. So that's probably just a metal. That screen is probably just a metal with stamped holes in it, right? Like the one on our grinder
Always,
mixer.
no, so
Okay.
a lot of, especially in wheat, you see it a lot in wheat. They actually will use silk,
Oh, okay.
and so for a long time, these tube sifters were also sometimes called bolters because they used a bolt of fabric.
Okay.
And that's, so you'd have that fabric wrap there for really fine stuff.
Right.
Ours are basically just a stainless steel mesh,
Oh,
just
okay.
like you'd have like a sifter, you know,
gotcha.
like
Oh, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
a flour sifter. It's the
Uh-huh.
same stuff.
Okay.
And then as you get larger, of course, you definitely could go to a stamped metal
Okay.
plate of some
Okay.
type, like hammer mills would use. But,
Right, right. Our grinder mixer, that's how what it uses.
yeah, so you definitely could get up to that.
We're mixing cattle
Our
food.
stuff is so fine that we just don't. There's not
Right.
a lot of value using a hard plate.
Right.
That screen works really well.
I gotcha.
Any other questions? We always make sure to prime the stone. We want to make sure there's always a grain cushion there.
And that acts as a lubricant on the stone,
Right.
correct?
Just make sure that while we're up, we don't accidentally wobble.
He's gonna grind some cornmeal.
Let's go! Hey, back, big girl, let's go. Because we run belt drive, so you have a slick pulley with a slick belt, we just slowly engage the stick.
Spinning and getting its timing on.
Keep you up. So again, we always start off wide with the top runner. So big jumps, and we just start bringing that down until we get to the desired consistency. We want to bring the stones down real close, real slow. If you bring that top stone down too quickly, it acts like a big set of brakes and everything comes to a grinding, screeching halt, right? We definitely don't want that. Being ground by the movement of the top stone, fed to the ton, comes off the meal spout, and again, during production we would typically have a second boot go off the leg to the sifter. We're ending in a bag right now just for ease, it's easier to see.
We are at Pop Smoke Shack in Kimberly City, Missouri. And we are eating loaded baked potatoes, and Gary is enjoying his. And then we got cheesecake. Look at that big old piece of cheesecake. And my loaded baked potato. Guys, this is amazing.
Put the logs on these racks.
Oh, okay, okay. You're using logs instead of sawdust bags.
Haul them up 60 at a time, drop them in here, sell them overnight.
Yeah, somebody took a bite out of it and then left the bite over there.
So you can see on these logs here, a lot of these are red oak, but it goes through with a specialized bit. And then take a little spork or a spawn and just pound it down in there and then paint over it with the brick cheese slabs.
Okay.
So those some of that's red oak.
Yeah, some of it's red.
That's
Most
white
of it's
oak.
red, yeah.
Yeah. It's getting harder and harder to do about it. Alright, that's pretty cool. So and you could do it all outdoors. You wouldn't have to have it inside.
We wouldn't have to, you don't want to get over up to 110 degrees, so they gotta stay shady. Or else it'll really cut spawn in there and it'll just render the log inert.
The camera just does not do justice to the beauty at our Airbnb. This was our first day at an Airbnb and it was absolutely wonderful.